Hello, everyone, and welcome back. It's me, the Card Economist, TCC. Today, we're going to be talking about building pokey wealth and preserving it in a bad U.S. economy. I guess the U.S. economy is kind of a reflection of the world economy a little bit because the U.S. economy is kind of tied in with everyone. So, if you're not from the USA, it's still good information. I noticed you guys really like these long form videos. That's why we're making another one. If you like it, watch it to the end. If it's kind of too long, don't forget you can always speed it up. Also, in the comment section today, I would like for you guys to leave as many of your questions as you'd like. They can be any questions at all because I'll take those and I'll make a video out of that as well. Because there's always so many questions to ask when it comes with doing stuff financially with your money. Especially, I know a lot about Pokemon card collecting. I've done pretty well with Pokemon card collecting, even though I don't always tell you how well I'm doing. So I want to talk about the United States economy first. I think it's in pretty bad shape. Can we agree on that? I think the United States economy is slowing down. We're not experiencing that much growth. This is pretty much what you would expect because we had a bunch of economic shutdowns earlier. And that was for COVID, right? Even though places like Walmart and Amazon got to stay open. It was like a handout from our government to Walmart and Amazon. But yeah, so a lot of companies went into lockdown. A lot of business sectors in the service industries like food and all that, hospitality, they basically just shut down and aren't opening back up. A lot of things changed. People are working at home. A lot of people quit. That's a big deal. Also, they were expecting more people to get back to work recently, and that's not happening. The opposite is happening. Even more people are quitting. It's in the news. People are talking about it. It's almost like a big unionized walkout, and I think it's fueled by two things, actually. So one of them is the vaccine mandate. You got people who are saying, I won't work if you're going to mandate the vaccine to me. And the other one is just people who are tired of working. Maybe they were frontline workers. They feel underappreciated, but also they realize that there's inflation going on and wages aren't keeping up with inflation. Why is there so much inflation? The U.S. government printed a bunch of money and they handed it out to us. We spend it on Pokemon cards. Not everybody. I'm just joking about our group. But also, I handed it out to businesses who really should not have been handed that money. Those businesses are typically they're over leveraged. What that means is they've borrowed a bunch of money in order to do their business because, as it turns out, borrowing money is really powerful since you can scale your business up, which is so important. But also the other reason why that's so important is because businesses don't pay proper interest on their bank loans. Kind of what's going on is you've got this thing called the central bank. It's really bad. I'm against it. The central bank is a privately owned bank that works for the government, and it prints up a bunch of your US dollars, which, by the way, makes the value of things rise and your income becomes not enough. Basically, your wages don't rise fast enough to meet the inflation. That's not always a problem, but it's becoming a problem this year. People are seeing that. Well, anyways, they print all this money up and they hand it off to the businesses and they say, don't worry about paying off the interest. We can figure that out later, right? And so for businesses, this is a twofold benefit. If you're already sitting on billions of dollars of corporate debt, well, during inflation, the debt actually becomes not as big of a deal. So just like a product becomes more expensive, so 4 billion becomes 6 billion, that's because the value of the currency is being devalued. Just like that, the debt becomes not as big of a problem as well because the currency is being devalued. So if you own $4 billion of debt that you need to pay back to the banks or to whoever is loaning it to you, and then you experience a ton of inflation, well, $4 billion, who cares? It's not as much anymore. So that's how it works. And so businesses love the inflation. And one of the interesting things that we see in our politics today is, people on the left suddenly discover that the corporations are on their side. Corporations are on their side. It's so weird because when I grew up in the 90s and the 2000s, people on the left were always against the corporations. The corporations were the bad guys. All of a sudden, the corporations are on their side. It's because they love the money printing. It's getting them out of debt, essentially. And then when the government hands you a paycheck, you just go and buy their stuff. And they get their stuff imported from China. So that money goes, and it gets sent off to China. So the money goes off to China where the goods are manufactured. And then these very wealthy people in China come over here to the United States and they buy up all your homes in California. They buy up all your homes in the UK and London. And then for normal people like me and you, we can't buy a home. We're like, why are the homes so expensive? Well, because all of the homes in the most investable areas were already purchased up by foreign investors. Where did the foreign investors get all the money? Your government printed it and sent it off to them. And you think that you're wealthier because you bought a pair of sneakers or something like that, with your stimulus check. So what's really interesting is during the COVID pandemic, we've got all this money printing. Everyone was handed stimulus checks. I was never for it. I was always against it. Especially it's annoying because some people didn't even get the checks. So if you were just earning too much money, you didn't get the check, which is silly because it's like, well, you definitely help pay for the checks, you know what I mean? But there's the whole class warfare that's going on. So what can you do about it? So you got a $1,400 check, maybe more, maybe a little less. And now you're looking at the grocery store and you find out the price of goods are higher. You can't figure out how you're going to pay for all your stuff. Taxes is higher. Although that's not just inflation, that's also policy. But the price of actual goods is higher. That's because when the price of oil goes up, the price of all goods go up since all goods have to be shipped, right? USPS Postal. I've been thinking about raising the price of live shipping in our own live stream. That's because, it's gotten like $2 more expensive, and I haven't raised the price yet, or raised the price. So anyways, the price of goods are going up, and the irony is that you got this check to buy all this stuff with, the economic stimulus check that got sent off to the corporations when you bought their stuff. You bought their stuff, the price of goods went up, and now the extra price of the goods is going to cost you more than the initial $1,400 that you got. So what I'm saying is if you go to the grocery store and you're spending an extra $40 at the grocery store each time, you're spending an extra, I don't know, like $10 at the pump. I don't know how much you guys will pay. Over time, over the course of the year, that $1,400 stimulus check you got is paid for now. You've paid for it in inflation. And maybe worse, probably worse, because while you got a check, the businesses got pretty big checks too. So it appears to be a nice handout to the people, but it was actually a much nicer handout to the corporations who are getting these interest-free debts or interest-free loans that is diminishing the value of their existing debts, right? So it's a bigger handout to them actually, and then you and I will end up paying all the taxes. What's funny about the taxes? So one of the things they wanted to do, they want to start monitoring all Americans. They want to spy on you if you did a $600 transaction, which is basically anyone in the middle class. It's crazy that they want to do that while we have politicians that want to make millions of dollars on insider trading at the same time. So they can spy on you, but they can get away with insider trading. It's really bad. So, I think there's going to be a lot of political turmoil over the next couple of elections. I think everyone kind of feels this. Anyways, so economic growth probably slowing. The cost of goods is rising faster than your wages. And then you have probably the very worst thing besides all of these bottlenecks and everything. People are quitting work. When people quit working, there's less money to tax and there's more money who are riding in the wagon rather than pulling the wagon, right? So there's all these people apply for unemployment benefits, and the government actually now has less taxes to hand out to people. So it's really bad. It's like a downward spiral. It's very bad. Okay, and so what does this lead to? Well, we got an aging population. Most places in the world have an aging population. The cost of things are rising, and the government does not have money to take care of the elderly. It's going to lead to more homelessness, and it's going to lead probably to a recession. Who knows, though? I don't really know. Like, the crazy thing about money printing is once you start, you kind of can't stop. Like, let's say we head toward a recession. Well, they could just print a whole bunch more money, and it's like, wow, the economy's doing well again. Yeah, I guess. But, then the inflation speeds up, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's inflating more. People need more money. Quick, print even more of it, right? So that's another one of the problems with money printing is that if you get into that sort of death roll, that downward spiral, that's how you get hyperinflation, because they just can't stop printing it, because the reality is the money's not there, right? The little piece of paper is just a way to represent value, and the government's just poof, creating money out of nothing. So they haven't really created goods that they're putting into the market and adding value to the market. The government's just clicking a button and all of a sudden more money exists. So that's why inflation is so bad. It's got a lot of people talking about it. It's got a lot of people freaked out. It's got us talking about it because we're collectors and we like to grow our wealth and grow our collection. Okay, so that was point number one. Point number two, owning things that the government cannot print is essential. So basically what we're saying here, if you can visualize it, the government is able to just print quadrillion dollars. So we've only, up to this point, we've only heard of trillions of dollars of debt. Maybe one day we'll have quadrillions of dollars of debt. To me, that would not surprise me. And then our billionaires would become trillionaires. Everyone's mad at the idea of a billionaire. Well, the billionaires, it's like an abstract number, the concept of a billion. One day it'll be a trillionaire and we'll have billions of dollars of debt. I'm sorry, quadrillion dollars of debt. So the government can print lots of money without actually doing anything. They haven't added any products to the market, and people are taking all the products off of the market. And so there's not enough goods replacing the ones being bought, and everything's going up in price. What does that mean for you? It means you need to buy things the government can't print. And one of the things we buy is Pokemon cards. So we buy old Pokemon cards or new Pokemon cards, which is one of the subjects I want to talk about. But there's other things you can buy. So people are buying maybe precious metals. People are buying cryptocurrency. There's a lot of interest in these things, collectibles, gold, and cryptocurrencies. And that's because they're all sort of seen as like a way for you to take your money that you've earned and park it into this thing that's actually kind of rare and the government can't print it. But I feel like it's kind of a very nuanced subject that requires a lot of thinking, something I've been thinking about for at least 3 or 4 years, constantly watching lots of videos and reading about it. I think about it just all the time. But you want to own things that the government can't print, like the government can't print land. That's the funny thing. So we buy a lot of crap from these corporations who they have it manufactured for pennies in China, then they ship it over here and they increase the price of it times like 20 and then they sell it to you, right? And then China takes the money that they earned during the manufacturing and what do they buy? Real assets, like the Epic Game Store. What is it? Epic Games. There we go. So Epic Games is a North Carolina video game company, and they were the maker of like Gears of War. I was a big Gears of War fan. I don't know if you guys were, but they were pretty cool. They were making great stuff. They have the Unreal Engine. Fortnite becomes the #1 video game. Who owns it? It's Chinese. It's the Chinese-owned Epic Games. It's insane, actually, when you think about it, because that's a U.S. company, and now it's foreign-owned because they took all of that, and now they own it. So we buy garbage, and they buy real assets. And people, I think, are sort of waking up to ideas like this. Like, you watch videos like this, and these ideas are spreading very quickly, and you're starting to realize, oh my gosh, I need to stop buying useless, let's say, outfits in a video game. You know what I mean? What do they call those? I used to remember this. You're buying digital content, DLCs, instead of taking that money and buying stocks in the company who produces the game that you play, right? So you could go buy Nintendo stocks rather than buying a DLC, hat for your character in a Nintendo game, right? There's a really big difference between those two. One is an asset and one is a consumable. So people are learning about this, and so yes, topic number 2 is you need to start buying things that the government cannot print, real assets. And I made a note here. I said housing is especially good. So this is something I've been thinking a lot about. One of the reasons why the price of housing has jumped so high is because I think housing is an especially good choice right now. In the video I talked about earlier how young people can build wealth, I talked about avoiding a lot of money traps for young people, useless college debt, right? Marrying into somebody who got useless college debt. So if you're picking out a wife or a boyfriend or husband and they got a useless college debt, don't buy their debt. Skipping the wedding, skipping the ring and the dress, going straight into owning a house rather than renting a house, right? So I think housing is especially good because the inflation is very strange with housing. There's 2 things that happen with the housing. Well, maybe 3. So first of all, it goes up just because investors are going to park their money in housing. So you're going to see housing rise in price as foreign investors and domestic investors continue to buy up land since the government can't print land. At the same time, the inflation is going to go up and people are going to demand higher wages. Now, I think the higher wages sort of lag behind everything else, and it does occur. I don't know if it'll occur so much that it's going to actually keep up with inflation ever. Like, everyone might just be more poor as a result of the inflation. But wages will rise. They always do. They rise a little bit. And what that's going to cause is people are going to be able to afford a higher rent. But more importantly, as you have these giant corporations, you've got like these private equities, you've got literal corporations, you got apps like, what's the big app that does all the real estate? Zillow? Yeah, Zillow. So you've got Zillow, and they're buying up all the cheap property, which makes sense. I mean, they've probably been doing data analysis on the price of homes, and they can probably figure out which home is exactly best to purchase. So you got Zillow literally just buying homes and then selling it at a higher price. This is going to continue a along with the rise in people's wages driving up rent, you'll also just have people who can no longer afford to buy an actual home. They just can't afford it. And then they'll be forced to rent as well. So you've got more renters, rising wages, inflation in the housing market, and then probably the last one. As a result of all this, because we live in a democracy where people can vote, people are going to vote for government housing, government projects. They're going to vote for government-assisted rent, which already exists. And it's almost like a guaranteed income for the landowners. And it's a really, really bad situation. So I think if you right now are renting, you need to stop buying Pokemon cards, build up a down payment. Don't worry about the whole like incoming housing market crash. Everyone keeps talking about the housing market crash. Don't think about that. Don't worry about that. All you're going to do is save up a lot of money as fast as you can for down payment, and then go buy just any house you can. Go buy a house. I shouldn't say any house. Do your research, research the schools, try to make sure you're getting a fair deal. It takes work to buy a good house, so go do work on that. But you need to make that a higher priority than investing in collectibles right now, because you're going to stay poor if you rent. All right? Buy things the government can't print. And a lot of people are turning to crypto, gold, and collectibles. All right, so the next topic I talk about is inflation. Here it is. Inflation will likely cause the Pokemon card market to stall before prices rise. So I think that basically with Pokemon cards, they are considered art and they are considered more of a luxury. People collect them because they're highly addictive. They're beautiful. Most importantly, they're nostalgic. These are some subjects I was learning about recently, and actually I think I wrote a note down on this. Yeah, so nostalgic feelings cause people to overspend on the cards. I shouldn't say overspend, but they spend a lot. The concept of overspending is just an idea, right? Like, are you really overspending on Charizard if everyone else is willing to buy that same Charizard for a very high price? So nostalgia. And the other one is status symbols. So as nostalgia sort of drives the demand for these cards, there's also going to be sort of like a status symbol amongst these people who have nostalgia for these cards. Like when you have a celebrity and they say, I've got the PSA 10 first edition base set Charizard, that's a status symbol for them. And wealthy people spend maybe even poor people spend just enormous amounts of money to obtain these status symbols. I like to link it all back to psychology as a sexual thing. I think it's mostly, I don't know if girls do it as much, but guys do it like crazy. You gotta have your gold chain, you gotta have your sports car, you gotta have your boat house. I got my boat house. And this attracts women to you. And so this is just this sort of biological driving factor, and collectibles kind of all fall into that. But we have the rise of nerds, basically, from the last 20 years. You got to remember, video games really didn't come out in full force until, I want to say, like Nintendo 64. I mean, obviously, there was the revival in the video game market after the Atari collapse, and that was the 1980s. But I feel like things changed around the time World of Warcraft and Nintendo 64 start coming out, and you got people who are even younger, Minecraft comes out, and all this other stuff. So there's this huge group of nerds now, and some of them are even quite wealthy, right? They might have became software engineers or accountants or even lawyers, and they played video games and they grew up and they remember Pokemon cards. They remember a lot of collectibles, actually. So sometimes you have to expand beyond Pokemon, but you have to realize they're willing to throw tons of money at these nostalgic items, and some of them are even going after them as status symbols, which is a really big idea, I think. And now we're looking at them as a way to preserve wealth. As long as there's an economy and a demand for these collectibles, you can take your money, park it into a card, and maybe even profit from the card when you go to sell it. And that's occurred for me many times. I'll buy a card. A great example, the Dark Dragonites from Rocket Returns. I bought them for like $360. That's what it said on the back of the card. One recently sold for like $3,400. I did extremely well. I bought 3 of those. Gosh, that would mean I almost made like $9,000 on them or something, off of a very simple purchase. Can that happen again? So some people are wondering, are we at the peak for Pokemon? No, I don't think so. I don't think so, not even close. You just got to be smart with what you're buying, though. And so let's see. So my topic here my point here, what do I think will happen in the card market as a result of the inflation? So my thoughts are this. As the inflation goes up and the cost of oil goes up and the cost of food goes up and the cost of rent goes up, remember, you don't want to be a renter. As those go up, people will have less extra money laying around to spend on collectibles. So you saw a boom in the price of the cards as a result of the stimulus checks. There's a chance that could happen again. So pay very close attention. If you hear about another stimulus round coming out, do not buy cards. That is what I've learned. I didn't know that in the past. I guess you could have predicted it, but I've watched it now, and the analytics show me if another stimulus check comes out, if it's even announced that it's a for sure thing, do not buy collectibles during that period. They will be heavily overpriced. And what you ought to do is sell your collectibles during that time. In the meantime, if a stimulus does not come out and we just experience inflation from the already existing problems, what you will want to do, you could probably continue to buy Pokemon cards, because I think the Pokemon cards will be underpriced at that time. Because what will happen in the future is, like I mentioned, people's wages actually will start to catch up to the inflation. They'll start demanding higher pay. And when people are paid more, voila, they can afford the cards at a higher price. Does that mean that they're buying more cards with that money? No, it just means that they can buy the same card, but they have to pay more for it. Well, if you were already sitting on a lot of cards during that period, all your cards inflated in price. So I think that is the move to make with the collectibles in general. And people clearly have similar feelings with like gold and with crypto. Okay, so, but especially Pokemon cards, they're a luxury and they're art, so they're not necessary. And you'll probably see the price held back by the fact that people will choose them less as their wages fail to buy them as much as it used to buy in terms of necessities like paying their mortgage and paying their rent. But as people start to pick up better paying jobs as a result of the inflation, finally the cards will start catching up in price. Okay, so those are my thoughts on that. The next topic, an economic downturn can be a huge buying opportunity. So this is another really important concept here. You might be buying cards now, like what I just said. It might be a good time to buy because eventually they'll inflate in price. Maybe it's a good time to save some money too. And this is what the crypto and the gold guys are doing. So they say, well, and I don't know how I feel about the gold guys because gold's a little less liquid. I guess you could buy like gold mining stock or something like that, or I don't know everything about gold stock, but there's gold stock you can buy. Physical gold, I think a lot of the guys buying the physical product, they keep talking about some sort of like silver squeeze or something like that occurring, and they're like, oh, well, people will demand the physical product and they won't be able to provide it, and that'll cause a squeeze. I don't know how much I believe all that. Yeah, I worry. Be very careful when you listen to social media, even me. Be careful what you listen to. Be sure to question it. I said this the other night. Be sure that you're being informed and not controlled. You know what I mean? So I always listen to all of this stuff with a grain of salt. And I sit down and I work it out on my own with my own thoughts. So these guys want a place to park their money. It may be in a place where the money's going up in value as people are buying up more crypto or more precious metals. They want a place to park their money because the idea is when the economy has its downturn, you take that and you use it to buy hard assets. And so a hard asset would be like, you go buy all the Apple stock because Apple crashed because the economy is in a recession. Why does Apple crash? Because nobody can afford Apple products during the crash. So Apple would be and I don't even know about that. You know what I mean? We're going to talk about that very soon, actually. Is Apple considered a blue chip stock? I don't know. Who knows what's going to happen these days? But people are claiming that, the stock market's in this epic bubble from all of the people trying to get their money out of US dollars and into some sort of asset. And also just the fact that there's more money now, right? So there's more money, so everyone's just tossing their money around. But yeah, my point here is that if there is an economic recession, that could be where you get your best card deals, right? So in a recession, people might be struggling to pay the bills and they don't want to, but they'll have to sell off their Charizard to you, and that's the tough reality of it. It also, what this means is you need to have some savings and some job security before you invest in Pokemons, right? So a lot of people will even run credit card debt, which I tell people not to do. We've got the slab away program where you can pay me $25 and I'll let you pay down a card over 6 months. And the nice thing about that is you're not using any credit card debt to do that. That's really important. Some people are buying cards and they're going into credit card debt, which to me is just crazy, because if the economy crashes, you're going to have to dump your cards and you're not going to get the full market price back on your cards. So now could be a good time to make sure you have job security and some savings in case there's a recession. And as for the precious metal and crypto guys, I have more thoughts about that. So my thoughts on crypto, and you guys have heard me talk about this multiple times. I'm very nervous about crypto. There's a lot of people who are very bullish and positive about it, but I've always been pretty negative about it. And that's because at one point I had to stop and ask what I liked about it. And a lot of the things I really didn't like about it. It's not immune to the central bank because the central bank and the government are in bed together. The government's going to make sure that its US dollar is protected and that it remains the world currency. And the goal of something like Bitcoin, it's not just like gold. Gold's pretty hard. Again, physical gold can be hard to liquidate. Bitcoin actually wants to be a world currency, easily transferable between countries. And there's probably some countries that are pretty happy with that idea because they don't like when the United States prints dollars. It's like cheating almost. So they would like that. And the United States, I suspect, does not want that. So one of the problems I find with crypto is it has no military and no government of its own to protect it. And so the United States is just going to make whatever laws it wants around crypto that protects and preserves its US dollar and the printing of the central bank. So one of the reasons I'm nervous about crypto is regulation. A lot of people talk about it as if it frees you from the central bank. I think that sales pitch is sort of a lie. It's not really the truth. Okay, so I also don't like how unpredictable crypto is. I think I read an article the other day that some whale was moving millions of dollars around to get out of crypto to secure. And right afterwards, you saw the price of crypto drop for a while. I don't know how often that can occur or what that can occur for. Like Bitcoin might be a little more resistant to that just because there's so many people who own it now. But there's all these junk coins, new coins, and you never really know, in my opinion, if something like that's going to happen. They're pretty unpredictable. The price of it keeps going up and down and up and down. That actually, the volatility, I can't say it, volatility of it bothers me a lot. Also, just the fact that you can have like Elon Musk come in and tweet a tweet and the price jumps or drops based on what he said. That to me suggests is too manipulatable. Also, you probably have, if I had to guess right now, crypto is more hyped than it has ever been before. And from my experience, when you buy into something during the hype, you are paying the highest price for it. The early movers in crypto probably did very well. I guess the question for us today is it still early movers time, or have we reached a point where everyone's kind of aware of it and they've already put their money into it? You know what I mean? So yeah, for me, it's kind of unpredictable, but also it's not just that. There's a lot of stock that have done very well. You know what I mean? Like the idea that you can only make money in crypto, I think is silly. It did extremely well during the last year with all this money printing and all the fear about the economy. And it was just good timing, right, in my opinion, in the crypto market. This year, I think like Bitcoin reached 60 something and then it crashed and now it's returned to 60. But, just returning to where it was during that crash, if you bought in during the hype, you've only recovered your money. At the same time, like my Apple stock has grown by 20%. So you just have to remember it's not your only option. And the unpredictableness of it, it does bother me a lot. And I suppose that's more of a blanket statement because you could say something like not knowing how the United States government is going to regulate Bitcoin is part of that unpredictability. So I suppose really I could have started with unpredictability and moved on to regulation. But here's a very big issue that I have with it as well. So I've thought a lot about it, and I think people park their money in crypto because they don't want US dollars, but they want to have money around for when the economy crashes. So I think there's a lot of guys thinking that way and wanting to do that. But this is also another thing I'm thinking. If the economy actually does crash, like go back in your mind to 2008 when the markets are tanking. If that happens, crypto's going to definitely go with it, right? Because people are going to want to pull their cash back out. They're going to want to liquidate so that they can go buy stuff. Or if the price of I said this earlier, if the price of Apple drops, you're going to want to go buy a bunch of Apple stock because Apple stock's an actual company producing goods. Apple stock pays dividends. I don't know how well the dividends are, but a lot of companies pay dividends. And so if the value of them drops, you're hoping to take that cash you had saved up in crypto and go buy something like Apple, so that now you've got Apple at a very good price. And then Apple, you've already made your money because you bought in at the right time, and then Apple goes back up, it appreciates, and you've got your dividends. So that's what people would like to do very much. Same with housing. If there's a big housing bubble that pops, you would hope to buy at the cheap point. Well, where are you going to store your money while you're waiting for it to crash? Maybe crypto. But here's the problem. If everyone's got that same idea, which they probably do, a lot of them probably do, what's going to happen is the moment the economy falls, crypto is going to tank too. You can sell it very easily. And I think there's a sort of psychological issue that occurs when it comes to crypto, where you see crypto has risen really high and you look at it and you say, I have this much money. Yeah, but everyone's doing that. Everyone's looking at the current price of whatever crypto you own, and they think, I've earned that much money from crypto. But that's not true, because once people start pulling that money out, the value of the crypto has to fall. So really only the first people to pull out have made that money. And so it becomes kind of like a timing issue. So when the economy actually starts to collapse, you have to get out really fast before everyone else does. And if everyone actually starts to do that, once that big dip starts coming in, everyone's going to start jumping out, because nobody wants to be in during the dip when it comes to crypto. So, it's kind of a cascading effect, in my opinion. So it's very, I really already said it's very unpredictable, and it's dangerous that way. And I understand some people have made some good money in it, and that's great. There were two ideas recently that I was thinking about recently with crypto that they're sort of like developments for me. The first one is, a lot of people criticize crypto because of the greater fool theory, where they say, well, you really just buy it, not because it produces a good, but because you expect somebody else to pay more for it than you did. And that's how it has to work, right? And I'm like, yeah, that's terrible, right? In the past, I listened to that and I said, that's not a very good reason to buy something. But I've also realized there's a lot of greater fools. So the world is loaded with greater fools. Doesn't mean you can't make money buying an item that might go up in price, and it probably happens all the time. And it's a proper criticism of cryptocurrencies to think that way. But as a counter argument, you might be underestimating how many greater fools there are. The real question is, who's the greatest fool, maybe? Who buys in at the very peak, you know what I mean, and overpays, and they get wrecked. They lose everything. And also, the concept that is like a gamble, right? People like to gamble, though, right? So, you think about, oh, well, crypto is gambling. You shouldn't gamble. People love to gamble. And that's another thing that I've accepted a little more. So, like, if you could call cryptocurrency a gamble, I think that would be a better description of it rather than investing, because of there's really a big, large, unpredictable variables when it comes to investing in cryptocurrencies. But again, people love to gamble. And so why bet against human nature in that way? And I'll also say this. So this is a positive one for crypto. When you go to the casino and gamble, or when you buy the lottery ticket, the government and the casino are designed to take a pretty large cut of the gamble. Whereas I don't think cryptocurrencies have that as much, right? So since they're not really, you can make some arguments, maybe like the crypto miners or the original makers of the cryptocurrencies, but yeah, I don't think. I think what I'm trying to say is it might be a bit more of an equitable gamble than if you had actually gone to a literal casino and played the slot machine. All right, I say crypto could already be in a bubble. Crypto's probably in a bubble. That's my suspicion. Everyone else probably realizes that as well. There could probably be a lot of people buying crypto going, it's probably in a bubble. But we've been saying that about stocks, and stocks haven't blown up and crypto hasn't blown up. The thing is, if they finally blow up, you sound like you're very clever buying crypto while it's rising. If it blows up and you lose all your money all of a sudden, so you're winning, and then it crashes, but you didn't pull out in time, you're not going to seem so smart anymore. So be really careful with that. And a last thing. So on the subject of being able to park your money into something that's safe, there's land. The land takes a while to sell, but I really do like buying land. There's gold. I don't know how I feel about gold. Gold's a really confusing one. I feel like crypto has kind of tried to replace gold, but then the gold guys are like, nothing ever really replaces gold. Central banks use gold to back up the value of their trades, right? They say, hey, well, if our dollar crashes, we got gold. You know what I mean? So the gold guys have some pretty strong arguments in that way. But it's so weird. If you look at gold, it has not performed very well when you think it should have in terms of the value of gold rising. And you get all these guys arguing, well, it's been manipulated. It's like, all right, well, then it's a manipulatable good. Why would you want it? And then also, it just seems a lot less convenient, because if you're trying to pay for something with something expensive, you would need a lot of physical gold to be moved around, and that's such a security risk, I guess. But not just that. There's another issue I had with it. Gold is actually inflationary. So they say, oh, there's a set amount of gold in the world and it doesn't inflate. The government can't print it. True, but they're constantly mining it. And you're right, there probably is a limited amount of gold. But I find it kind of ironic that the miners just go out and mine more and more and more of it every year. So I find that kind of ironic. Not that I think that crypto is very rare either. So I've made this argument too. We're constantly making new cryptos, and you can own a fractional part of a crypto, right? So as the crypto goes up in price, if you're transferring $10 payments in crypto around, how are you able to do that? Well, because you're transferring a portion of the crypto, right? So what does it matter, the number of crypto coins that exist for any particular cryptocurrency? And then you've got all these new technologies constantly coming out, trying to compete with the latest or the older technology, and all that's really nerve-wracking for me. It just feels like a gamble. But again, maybe there's a lot of greater fools, and maybe gambling's not that bad. Who doesn't like a good gamble? Who's to say that you don't gamble a little bit in the stock market in general? So my last point on the topic of crypto was blue chip stocks are resistant to recessions, and that I actually believe a lot in. So if you were to just take a portion of your money, you don't have to buy gold, and you don't have to buy crypto. You can just go buy like Walmart stock. Walmart's not going anywhere. Walmart's like number 1 or number 2 in retail, if you want to say, and that's where everyone gets their food. Not everyone, but it's where most people get their food and their clothing and their goods. So if you're looking for a place to park your money where your money is growing in value rather than shrinking in value thanks to the government printing money, maybe just go buy some blue chip stocks and go find your favorite blue chip stocks. Go do some research on the companies that you think will perform best during a recession. Everyone has to keep buying food. Go buy some oil. It's not like oil's well, who knows? Maybe oil will. Maybe there'll be less demand for oil. But yeah, people are not going to stop eating. So go buy some Walmart and Amazon stock. Even Amazon, I would question. I think Walmart stock would be my favorite blue chip stock, but there's probably a lot of research you can do on that. Another question is, will we even have a recession? What if there's just no recession? So you got, obviously the current administration is a Democrat administration. And when you ask them about how they feel about the economy, they are very rosy. They're like, the COVID's behind us. Everyone's getting vaccinated. And so we're at a low point now, and we're going to recover. We're actually in the recovery phase already. The recession already has occurred. We're in the recovery phase now. So, if you have a brighter view of the economy, the question could be, why buy blue chip stock at all if the economy is just about to start growing? All right. So now on to the topic of cards, Pokemon cards. So if you made it this far in the video, let me know in the comment section. We're 38 minutes in. It's pretty deep. I'd love to know how many people watched this far. So stop right now and leave a comment if you made it this far. And what I want to do is talk about my thoughts on Pokemon cards. I might make another video talking about these subjects. So I don't buy gold. I buy a little bit of gold. I buy like 1 coin. And I own a small amount of crypto that I never sold, but also I own some Coinbase stock, which actually has done okay. And because I bought some Coinbase stock after it dipped after its initial launch, and I just never sold it. Same deal. I didn't care to. So I got a chunk of Coinbase, tiny amount of crypto, and a gold coin, and then everything else is in Pokemon cards. Let's talk about some topics in Pokemon cards that I think you guys really ought to hear. All right. How should I start? So I want to help you guys make better choices when you're investing in Pokemon cards. And I feel that there's a subject that really caught my eye recently, and I wanted to talk about it because it surprised me when I saw it. Basically, I saw these recent Sword and Shield PSA 10 cards selling for like $1,000, $800, maybe over $1,000, right? Like, you know, you've got celebrations coming out. People are already express grading the Charizard, selling them for over $1,000. It blows my mind. So the number one thing I want you guys to get into your head is a new idea. And I don't know if any other PokeTubers talked about it. I might be the one minting this idea. It's a very important idea. And I call it the true population of that card. So we're used to running over to PSA and looking at the population, and some of us worry about the population. Some people buy purely on impulse. I want you to think about the true population, which is the population of that card over time. And that itself is not necessarily a new idea. There's been PokeTubers warning us the populations are going to blow up. But now I really want you to try and settle on the number. What number do you think is going to be the final number for the number of PSA 10 Charizards? And that should help you dictate what you think the real price of that card is. So don't think in terms of, oh, it's going to blow up, oh, the population is rising. What's the final number for that population 20 years from now? You know, because if you're going to invest, and you're going to invest seriously for the long run, you want to be able to think in that term. If you know a Charizard's going to get to pop 10,000 for the PSA 10s, why buy it now when it's pop 20? Because it's been express graded by a few guys, and they're charging $1,500 for it. It's absolutely shocking. So my first topic is you need to start avoiding PSA 10 modern, recently graded PSA cards. As of this video, PSA is still charging $150 per grade. You're paying that cost when you buy that card. It's absolutely crazy. It's been a few years now where we've been watching this behavior, where people quickly grade brand new cards that just came out, and then they're heavily paid for. I mean, they go in auction for outrageous amounts or buy it now for outrageous amounts. And then like 6 months later, all of them start returning from PSA and the price just tanks. The price just falls so fast. But also over a longer period of time, like 1 to 2 years, the population, it turns out, really explodes. A great example would be like the SV49 Charizard from Hidden Fates. Although, ironically, his price has stayed pretty stable. He is super iconic. So I've got 2 of them myself and I'm not selling. But what I would like for you guys to do is think about your timing in the market with these modern sets like Sword and Shield. There's a lot of card product out there to open. I recommend, you know, I'm always offering XY era cards on my channel when we're live. I'm recommending XY era stuff. I'm trying to tell you guys. I've been hinting at you guys that I like the XY era stuff. It's just a lot more rare. It's beautiful. Not as much of it graded. But you got these people, and what they do is they jump on the latest news. That's where all the hype is. So I totally get that. And if you're somebody who opens up Charizards or buys singles and express grades them and flips them for money, good for you. You've done well. But I'm telling the buyers of these things, you need to stay away from it like the plague. You're totally way overpaying for them. I guarantee you that Charizard that you bought for $1,500 will be like $500 in a year. So it's a very bad move to be buying any recently graded PSA cards from people who submitted at that $150 price tag. And it's a very bad move to be buying any graded Sword and Shield cards that have recently come out. Their true population has not been seen, and it will be seen eventually, because eventually PSA will probably have to lower their price to remain competitive. And then an ocean of Sword and Shield cards are going to be submitted for grading. And those are going to come back, and the population figures for these cards are going to explode. But more importantly, over 20 years, you're going to discover that Pokemon Nintendo printed outrageous amounts of Sword and Shield cards. You can't see it now, and the markets reflect the fact that people don't understand this. At the same time, what you'll discover is that some cards really are low pop. Again, I'm hearkening back to the XY era stuff. Pokemon cards weren't as big back then, and I don't think Pokemon printed as much, and I don't think as many of them are going to grade 10 either. So consider the XY era stuff, okay? Or further back, why not? You know what I mean? There's some great WotC era cards still going for like $500 to $1,000. So, you know, and that just blows my mind. Like, what I just said is true. There's like WotC era cards going for $1,000 as a 10. And you got people busy buying $1,500 Charizards from like celebrations. I can't believe it, because it's almost guaranteed to fall down to like $500 a card, maybe below that. Think of Champion's Path Charizard blew up in population, and people were even overpaying for the booster packs. I was selling them at a really high price. I couldn't believe. So I would set the high price. I'd be like, nobody's going to buy that. Everyone bought it. And then they sent their Charizards off to grade, and they came back, and now they're not worth anything because there's too many. Now, I shouldn't say that. It's not that they're not worth anything, but you're never really going to... well, let's move on to the next subject, because this is something I want to talk about. You're never going to have that card be a true status symbol. So one of my topics is you need to be looking for cards that are status symbols and nostalgic. There's no nostalgia for Sword and Shield, not yet. There will be. There will be in 20 years when we know the true population. And the cards aren't really a status card. You know what I mean? That's hard to define, isn't it? What card is a status card? Amongst nerds right now on social media, it appears to be a status card. Very briefly, it will be forgotten. Like, who's talking about Chubby Cheeks Pikachu anymore from Vivid Voltage? Anyone? Nobody. Who's talking about Special Delivery Pikachu anymore? Nobody. And we saw that card fall from like $3,000 per 10 to like, I think the last time I checked, it was like $800 per 10. It's probably lower now. It's probably even lower. And I don't want you guys to go in and buy those way overpriced cards. The other thing I don't want you guys doing is grading with PSA right now. PSA at $150 a card is very outrageously high. The actual cost of what they're doing is quite low. You know, as you guys know, I'm putting together TCC grading. There's the cost of the sonic welder, the cost of the laborer, and then the cost of the actual materials, which are all fairly cheap. I think PSA could easily make their price about $25 a card. They could. Actually, that's what they had in the past. In the past, the cost of grading with PSA was as low as like $15 a card. And they could afford to do that because that's all it costs to grade. It doesn't cost them much more. They still make their profit. But now they're charging $150 a card. Is unsustainable and is way overpriced. And if you're sending cards out to grade with PSA, you are benefiting probably off of the social media hype that somehow people are still buying these $1,500 Charizards. But more and more people need to figure out that that's a very poor move to be buying those, because they will fall in price to $500 a card. Probably less than $500. I've opened a lot of celebrations now, and I would value the Charizard around $400 for 10. So if he reached about $400 for 10, I'd consider picking one up at that point for my collection. But right now, I would avoid it like the plague. Okay, and then a lot of people are asking what other card grading companies to use. So first of all, I want to say be patient. You could just wait for PSA to offer cheaper card grading. And a lot of people have said, well, if everyone does that, you're just going to have the same problem. But that's fine, because the value of your card hasn't, it's an interesting concept, right? Your card is the same card a year from now, 2 years from now, and 3 years from now. So you can create a collection of ungraded cards that you're just holding on to and waiting for good prices to arrive in the card grading. Maybe that's during a recession. Maybe there's a recession where PSA falls in price. Maybe that's when one of PSA's competitors really risen up and started to take a part of the market share. It's possible. I think it's definitely possible if PSA doesn't lower their prices. PSA has to lower price. So be patient. The other thing I would tell you is there's two fairly good companies I would consider. I would say Beckett. I'm not a big Beckett fan. I don't think the guys who originally started grading cards were either. Beckett's really tough, but I'll be honest, I just don't like their slabs. That's a preference thing. If you like Beckett, go do Beckett. But the other problem with Beckett is it's also very expensive. So Beckett's already really expensive as well. So the other two companies that I like are CGC. CGC cards, right? Really tough graders. But pick your very best cards out and send those to grade. So I would still be sending your very, very best cards out, cards that have a chance at the pristine 10, maybe if you're lucky, a perfect 10. And you can even look through cards you already own that are already graded and be like, I wonder if this is a CGC pristine. You can have those reholdered. So that's something you can do with your money if you're looking to grade cards. SGC is the other company. They've been around for like 20 years. I didn't know that about SGC. I like that a lot. That means they've had a lot of practice. They've developed a lot of techniques. a lot of principles for how they grade. The problem for SGC is similar to BGS. I'm not a fan of their slab. But, as long as they're grading properly and their service is much cheaper than BGS, I'd consider it. I'd be open-minded to it. But again, also my other topic was that you should be patient, because you could just wait for PSA to open. And I think PSA offers the most value on the sale if you can get the grading at a lower price. You have to wait for a lower price. All right, and that's going to be the entire video. I can see I've spoke for 50 minutes, which seems to be one of the things I love to do. Hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, let me know. Don't forget in the comment section to leave me a question so that I can make a video out of that question. I'll see you guys later.